What's up, everybody, and welcome to Phoenix Over 40. I am thrilled that you've decided to join us in today's live Facebook event. There are a few different ways to join this conversation. You can do it via the Zoom link that is in the invite, or you can join me just in the Facebook Live. Just make sure to refresh, join me in the Facebook Live. And also you can choose to watch the replay. So if you do need a replay, make sure to comment that. And as you're coming in, no matter where you're coming from, let me know where you're coming from. I want to know where you're at in the world. I am living in beautiful Hawaii. My name is Noi. It is short for a very long Hawaiian name. So I kind of keep it easy, keep it simple, stupid, and just go by Noi. And Noi rhymes with joy. That's the easiest way to remember me. I am a life overhaul specialist. And as a life overhaul specialist, I have actually been certified in health and life coaching because I want to, and I'm called to, stoke the fire in women who are ready to unleash their inner badass and become their bravest self. This is my calling. And I have achieved the certifications to be able to help women shift their identity. And there's a really important piece to that. And I'd like to explain that to you if you missed our last live training about identity shift and how if we can't really become our bravest self until we shift our identity into becoming our bravest self. And we do that in very different ways. But when you go from who you are to who you want to be, then the world opens up. And these are some of the things that happen when that opens up. You get to control the chaos in your mind so that you can release peace into your environment. I know when I first started my Phoenix transformation, the world was scary to me. And I was influenced by the anxiety of everybody around me because I'm an empath. And empaths have a unique ability to feel the feelings of everybody around. If you've ever, as long as you can remember, walked into a room and then felt maybe like anxiety or overwhelm or different feelings were kind of flooding you and you weren't even sure like where they were coming from, you're likely an empath. You have a gift. And that gift can sometimes become a burden. And I help women shift from empath into empowered, being the ones that actually shape the environment instead of being shaped by the environment. I also help women reconnect to their inner wisdom to cultivate their confidence and their self-love. Being an empath growing up, I had a difficulty with self-love and self-confidence because I was always struggling with these emotions and feeling the effects of the things that were going on around me. And I really struggled to find that identity. And I felt this internal shame. Well, as I've been able to do in the past years is I've been able to shift that shame and create in me self-confidence and self-worth that have me opening up doors I didn't believe I was capable of opening. And so I help other women do the same. And in order to do that, I help them up-level their identity. Identity shift is important because in order to achieve the life that we know, that we truly desire, we have to believe it. We have to believe we are that person so that our behaviors and our thoughts and our feelings can shift into that new identity. And it ends up pulling us toward that. And I help women do this because it's a lot easier said than done. Let's be honest. We have barriers that are blocking us from doing that at every turn. And finally, I love to help women strategize solutions. I am a project manager. I have my PMP. I've been an administrative support staff for 25, 30 years. And I am good at strategizing solutions that other people can't see because I can think out of the box in that way. And I can help women turn obstacles into opportunities. I have done that in my own life, having faced a lot of different obstacles, including breast cancer, and finding a way to turn that obstacle into a new opportunity for an upgrade, which I was successfully able to do. If you'd like any of my backstory, please reach out. There is some information in a lot of other videos, and I would love to share those with you. When it comes to identity shift, like we talked last week, our identity is just a combination of all of our belief systems. Who we are is a bunch of beliefs about who we are, who the world is, how the world relates to us, who we are in the world. All of those things are part of our identity. And those beliefs create our thoughts, and those thoughts create our emotions and our feelings. And we are human, we react subconsciously to our feelings. Our behaviors come straight out of our feelings. They're connected to our feelings. This is how we're created, this is how we're wired. And those behaviors and habits, those actions, show us the result that we either want to see or we don't want to see. So those results then either enforce that belief or they can contradict that belief. So this is the area that, as a habit change coach, I help you with your behaviors and habits by helping you process through your feelings and thoughts so that we can create a different result, and it shifts your belief about that. And the more beliefs we can shift, the more your identity shifts, and then you can change your experience. You can change your experience of how you're showing up in the world. And that is what I get to help women do every day, because our identity is like us with a giant rubber band tied around our waist. We try to pull away from our identity, it either snaps or it pulls us back in. And that's why we often do things we don't want to do. Or maybe we make decisions that we didn't think were very helpful, but we didn't see it until after the fact. You know, we sometimes want to change. We want to start new habits. We want to eat better. We want to exercise. We want to drink more water. But for whatever reason, when we try, we can't. I know I was super frustrated with all the diet and exercise programs that I had tried that I just could not stick to. And I didn't understand why. I help women understand why, understand the underlying barriers that they're dealing with, and then rewire those barriers, turn those fears into fuel so that they can become and shift their pull of their identity. And today's topic is going to be talking about fear. And this is something that is probably the biggest barrier whenever we are out to change our identity, because whenever we're in the process of moving toward an identity change, like I said, we're tied to that pull. There are mental barriers that arise, they get stirred up, and fear is one of them. Fear is an emotional response. It is your fight or flight response. It is the result of your amygdala seeing the change and trapping shut like a bear trap. And when your amygdala shuts down on an idea, you can't move into that idea. So fear and that bear trap is something that can hold us back. And it holds us back in two ways. First of all, it holds us back from making choices or decisions because we're afraid of what might happen, because we're afraid of a belief in the future. And that's why that one motivational quote that I did at the beginning of the week talked about there's nothing to fear but fear itself. Fear is an idea. It is not a reality, but it's a very real idea, isn't it? It's a very real feeling when it happens. And when it happens, it often holds us back from making a choice that is going to shift our identity. So that fear sabotages us in that way. Another way fear might sabotage us is in situations where we feel easily offended or reactive. So we might be having a conversation with somebody about something, and then something they say just triggers this chaos in us, and we end up like biting their heads off. Have you ever had that happen where and then maybe after the fact, when the smoke clears, you're like, why did I get so offended by that? Because it definitely wasn't, the behaviors that came as a result of it were not what my intention was for this relationship. Being reactive is a result of fear. And sometimes that fear is really big and debilitating and can freeze us, or it can be just small little tickles that make us super easily offended when we see a certain news story on TV. And you're like, whoa, that's interesting. That kind of triggered me in a certain way. And that's how I now deal with fear. You can hear my belief system now. I get curious about it because I believe that fear is not a tormentor. Fear is a teacher. And when we look at our fear and we understand the kind of fear that it is, we have an opportunity to rewire it. And that is what a health and life coach helps people do. We help to rewire fear, because your bravest self is standing on the other side of the thing that you fear most. So understanding what you fear most is something that you have to do. Now, I'm going to, in this video, my intention for this video is to help you build awareness around the 5 core human fears. All humans have these 5 core human fears, but and so even things like spiders and snakes and stuff fit into these fears, because these 5 core human fears are the big buckets. The details are like the fear of snakes, fear of flying, fear of public speaking. Those are the details, but they fit into one of these buckets in a different way. So when you can understand these 5 core human fears, you are able to identify exactly how to rewire them instead of feeling trapped by them, instead of feeling tormented by them. You learn ways to actually rewire and restructure them in your brain. So it all starts with awareness. So my goal is that through awareness, we can help you face everything and rise. Face our fear. That's the only way that we can rewire it, is to face it, because my goal is for every woman to rise. This is a very popular quote that I love to use all the time. It's sort of the mantra of my life. There's no force more powerful than a woman determined to rise. But that determination starts with a choice, and that choice is to look at your fear, to explore it. I'm not saying necessarily like jump off a cliff or anything like that. Don't just confront it, but explore it. Get curious about it. And we're going to do that by focusing on some fears. And I'd like to share with you a story. So I went to a personal development retreat in New Mexico, and one of the tools that they use to help us identify our biggest fears was a trust fall. Now, this wasn't just any normal trust fall where you stand next to each other on the ground and you just fall back into your partner's arms. No, we had to stand at the top of probably a 5-foot level, and we had to fall into the arms of our group, who had to catch us at the bottom. You can really see her fear here in her face, because it is not an easy thing to stand that high up. And as I'm 5'10", so I'm looking on that much higher than that, because that's where my eyes are, right? It is not easy to do this backwards, eyes open, and fall into the arms of people you only just met 2 days before. It was terrifying. I had been on the ground level for several people so that I could see and I could decide what this was going to be about and how competent these people were. And so finally, in the middle of the pack somewhere, I decided, okay, I was going to do this. Let's just rip this Band-Aid off. Let's just go up there and get this done. When I get to the top, I was frozen in fear. And I didn't even understand what fear I was facing. And I told the coach who was leading the retreat, I said, I can't move. And he's like, what are you afraid of? And he started spewing out different things that I might be afraid of. Are you afraid they aren't going to catch you? Do you not trust them? Are you afraid, that you're going to die? Are you afraid that you're going to get hurt? What are you afraid of? And everything that he said didn't strike a chord. I was going inside and I was like, no, it's not that. No, it's not that. What am I afraid of? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this story as an example as we go through the different fears, because I want to say how in this situation, each of these fears might look, so that you can gain a better understanding of a practical application of this fear. So these fears come from the book Social Intelligence, The New Science of Success by Carl Albrecht. I encourage you to read more about it if you want, but I'm going to be going into great detail about how some of these show up in our lives. Okay, first fear. Oh, sorry. All of these fears tickle our 3 human needs. Okay, we have 3 basic human needs: love, safety, and belonging. All humans need these 3 things minimum to survive. Okay, this has been rewired into our brain since caveman time. So all of these fears tickle love, safety, and belonging in a different way. And that's why it's important to understand why they are 5 different types of fears, because they all threaten this in a different way. And that's the key to unlocking your awareness about them. So the very first one is extinction. So this is the fear of annihilation or ceasing to exist. The thing is, more than just being afraid of death. This is more than a fear of death or how we might die, but a fear that we will no longer be. See, our brain can't distinguish between a stress response that's real and a stress response that's imagined. So even if I'm standing at the top of that trust fall and I can't picture in my head myself falling, then if I fell, I would cease to be who I am standing in this moment, wouldn't I? Because I can't picture myself doing it. That would be an example of how extinction would show up in this situation. And, anytime we're trying something new and we don't have an identity of ourselves in that version, our brain won't let us do it. We actually have to, if I'm a coach and I'm helping somebody with this fear, the key to unlocking this fear is to develop that new identity. Learn to see ourselves as versions of our bravest self. Learn to see ourselves taking that action in our head so that we can get comfortable with the idea of doing it and then being able to lean into the action after we get comfortable. So that is how extinction shows up. The next one is mutilation or bodily invasion. If we think back to our basic human needs of love, safety, and belonging, when we have fears of mutilation or bodily invasion, it's triggering our primal need to keep ourselves safe. This is the fear of losing a part of our body or having our body's boundaries invaded. So it is physical harm to ourselves. So specifically physical harm. This might even manifest itself as fear of surgery because you're going to be cut open, fear of cars. If you think you're going to get into a car accident, you can see in your head yourself all mangled. In the instance of the trust fall, this might look like if I fall and I get hurt, I might break my back, or I could, break my neck. I could be paralyzed if I fall into these people's hands and they don't catch me. So this would be how that fear would show up in real life. The next one is loss of autonomy. So loss of autonomy is the fear of being immobilized, paralyzed, restricted, enveloped, overwhelmed, entrapped. Can you see where I'm going here? It's the fear of losing control. Loss of autonomy is also known as ego death. Our ego is how we look at the world and how we control the world, what sense of control we have in the world. If we are approaching the world from a place of, I need to control this situation before I can feel comfortable to get into it. I need to control the factors of it before I can step into this situation. That would be how loss of autonomy shows up. So if I'm at the top now of the trust fall, and for instance, one of the things I did do is I weighted several things so that I could gauge the experience of the people in the group below. I needed to gauge how strong they were, how coordinated they were, how this was one of the fears that was definitely showing up for me before I went up there. At the top, it could manifest itself as, I don't think I remember seeing that person ever catch anybody. She's new, so therefore I refuse to do this because I know that she's inexperienced. Or I just can't possibly give my trust in this situation to people I don't know. I refuse to do it because I can't trust that they are going to get my back. And so that is how this would show up. It just basically feels like helplessness or powerlessness. Anytime we feel like we are powerless in a situation, and it might even sound like I feel trapped by this relationship, or I feel held back by my boss. These are the ways that this might manifest itself in real life. The next one is separation, abandonment, or rejection. These are fears about what other people will think about you. And it goes back to our mammalian brain, where if we were kicked out of our tribe, we would not survive. We were conditioned for belonging. And if our belonging to the tribe is at risk, we might not make a certain decision if we think that we're going to be voted off the island. And this can show up in many ways. And this is a really interesting one. It can show up in divorce and fear of divorce or fear of losing a relationship, but it can also show up in a relationship going deeper. Let me explain. When a relationship deepens and all of a sudden we are more, I guess, invested in that relationship, our collateral, internal collateral in the relationship goes up, which can make us feel scared, because if we then lose that person, because we have been now connected on an emotional level, they can hurt us more. It can hurt us more to lose that person, or what they say can hurt more when they say it to us. Like if they criticize us, it can hurt even more if that relationship deepens. So this can show up in either I don't want to lose this relationship, or I don't want to go any further in this relationship because I'm too afraid of losing that relationship eventually. In the trust fall incident, there was at one point, I can remember the idea that if I don't fall, these people are going to reject me. So that showed up at one point. And then it could also be, do you not, do you think that they will let you fall? Do you believe that they will, abandon you and not be there for you when you fall? That's another thing. So you can see that it showed up in both different ways. So I encourage you to get real deep in the weeds on this one. It's kind of a fun one. So this one, though, this next one is the one that shows up most for me. And tell me if this resonates with you. Humiliation, shame, or worthlessness. This is when people feel shame before something has even happened. As humans, we need to feel worthy of love, and we need to feel valued in the world in order to connect with others and ourselves. This shows up in any situation where you could be seen as worthless. So there's two different things here. Shame and guilt are two different things. Guilt is I've done something bad, but shame is I am bad, and is often an internal identity that we have of ourselves. If I am bad, how can I connect with other people? Am I worthy of love? And it often comes to light as fear of criticism, or fear of making a mistake, fear of failure. And maybe fear of public speaking, because you're afraid you're going to say something wrong and people are going to judge you for that. That might be the separation side of it. Or you're afraid that you're just going to be wrong because you don't feel like you've deserved the limelight. You don't deserve that you have enough education or charisma to be able to be in the public eye. And even just a small mistake for these types of people can send someone with this fear into a shame spiral, ruminating over that mistake over and over and over, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. What is wrong with me? I feel broken. How can I, even ask for a raise at work when I haven't worked here that long, or I haven't earned another certification to justify me asking. These are the ways that this can show up. And when I was on the platform, I realized that this was the shame that I was dealing with. This was the fear that had me frozen. It was the idea that what if when I fall, I do it wrong and hurt these people? What if I don't fall straight? What if I throw my arms out accidentally? I was more worried about hurting them than I was them hurting me. That was the fear that I had to confront. And it was a really big eye-opening awareness for me to realize that it wasn't other people that have been hurting me my whole life. It was me that has been hurting me my whole life. And I just have to say that really reshaped the way that I thought about the world, just seeing it, just understanding who the real enemy was. Because up to that point, I had been, blaming people for the ways that I'd been feeling in the world. And truthfully, the fear was coming, the shame was coming from inside. And the person that needed to confront it was me. And the way that I had to learn to rewire this fear was to prove to myself my own value. take time to be with myself more, to nurture myself more, to cultivate my confidence and see and look at and appreciate and take in the rewards of that confidence. See, notice when people give me, compliments. Take it into my head, because up to that point, somebody could tell me that I was pretty and it would be like, oh, thank you. But I really didn't like actually go anywhere. I had to learn to say, you know what, I am. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Really, I do. And just start to just practice confidence. And so I invite you to consider, what are the ways that fear is showing up in your life? What are these fears, holding you back from? What are they costing you? What actions have you personally taken or not taken in response to your fear and the way these things are holding you back? Because I know that many of us, well, all of us deal with fear, but many of us are standing in our own way when it comes to making the choices, setting up the habits, making the decisions to jump into the life that we deserve. These fears are costing us jobs. They're costing us relationships. They're costing us money in many ways. All of these fears are holding us back if we don't take bold action to change them. And then if we did, I'm curious, what would open up for you if you could turn these fears into fuel? And, this is something that can really reshape the trajectory of your life. And I encourage you to think about, what are these fears costing you? And if you'd like to open up a conversation about how specifically to target these types of fears and what ways that you can rewire them in your brain, I invite you to join that conversation with me. And all you have to do is reach out to me in the link in the description, because I help women stoke this fire. I help women every day get to the bottom of what fears holding them back, and then using cognitive restructuring, using neurolinguistic programming, habit change coaching, all of those things help to rewire the identity so that that fear no longer exists. It actually becomes fuel for that giant step forward. So if you would like to open up that conversation, definitely reach out to me. Let's have a conversation about how this is showing up in your life. And if you'd like to take the test, I posted a link in the group about a quiz, a fear quiz, 5 simple questions. Answer takes about 2 minutes to do, but you can answer these 5 simple questions and it can start to give you an idea about what fears might be sabotaging you on a day-to-day basis. Because the truth is, when this fear shows up, when this belief system shows up in one area of our life, it also shows up in all of the others. So first you find the fear, then you follow the fear to the belief, you rewire the belief, and then watch all those other areas open up. Change the belief in love and watch your money start opening up. Change the belief in your career and watch your health start opening up. That is how habit change coaching works. And it is fascinating, because I want to empower women to face their fear, face everything and rise from it. Use it as fuel. And let's have a conversation about how that works for your unique life, because only you know exactly what experiences created those fears. And those experiences are what you have to look at in order to rewire them. So I thank you so much for joining me here today. Next week, we will be discussing another barrier that can keep you from your bravest self, and that is what we're focusing on, because so much of what we are taking in every second is subconscious. And so we're going to be looking at ways that we can actually influence our subconscious to work for us instead of against us. I'll see you guys next week. I'm Noy, and it rhymes with joy. And I hope that this has brought a little more joy into your life. Have a wonderful week.